Hello everyone, my name is Pedro. Thank you for joining us today for the VFQ Foundations webinar. We've put together this webinar to present something we've been working on and we have a product that we're really proud of and also to show you how VFQ Foundations has the potential of changing the way you work forever. So just to jump into the intros really quickly, my name is Pedro. I'm a product management and innovation consultant at Emergent and lead part of the value flow quality products. And I'm passionate about education and helping people change the way they work forever. Steve?
Hey, so I'm Stephen. So I help lead some of the education programs that Emergent gets involved with some of the bigger organizations across the world. I help develop a bunch of our courses and material. And as Pedro says, we're kind of excited about VFQ Foundations. We do believe it can help folks get to grips with solving some of their problems a lot sooner. So what we're going to talk about today, so we're going to talk about the problem that we're going to try and really solve. We're going to introduce you to what we call our guiding principles and our essential practices. But basically, we're going to help you with how you might want to start organizing your work around delivery of value. Okay, so really focusing in on making sure the things that we are doing are the most valuable things, the work that we are delivering is the most valuable that can be delivered out. Help you focus in on things around experimentation and discovery during that experimentation process, again, to unlock what is valuable. We'll look a little bit around visualization and how that's kind of key to help navigate complexity, but also what visualization really means within your context. And again, we're looking to help you guys unlock the potential of your teams and especially your organization. So the problem to be solved. So out there are a number of methodologies. So which methodology should you choose? Which one is going to be that silver bullet? Which one is really right for your problem and your context? Are you even doing the methodology right? So why isn't the rest of the organization doing this? We hear these things again and again and again. These are like constant things that we've heard over the years working with various clients. We look towards why isn't agility sticking? Why is the methodology so hard to actually put in place and for it to grow and foster the way we would expect it to do? And how, if you have a great idea, how are you going to get your first value from that? How are you going to get it into the hands of who's most important to you, your customers? So we started off with what's kind of the goal of an enterprise. What is a large organization really trying to do? Well, it's really trying to take an idea and take it all the way through to market. Whatever stages you use in order to take that idea and shape it, validate it, etc. What we're really trying to do is drive valuable ideas to market, ideally as fast as possible. And an idea might be a new change process, it could be a new product, or it could even be just new ways of working in order to deliver that value. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at this, there are a lot of methodologies out there. So, for instance, we have our good old Scrum, we have Kanban, we have Scaled Agile Framework, we have Design Thinking. And these methodologies, despite the fact sometimes we approach them as though they are relatively new, so teams adopting Scrum right now may believe that it is brand new, but it's been around for a number of years. So what we're really trying to do is help to understand why those things aren't sticking, why they aren't working as they might within an organization of your size or scale or complexity.
Yeah, and these methodologies, most of them are end-to-end, right? It's how do you drive an idea to market? So what's happening when companies are trying to implement it and failing at doing so, or at least struggling, and we don't have much stickiness to that change, right?
So if you look at, or if you've been around agility for a while, and specifically around Scrum, we've had the Agile Manifesto. It talks to us about individuals and interactions over processing tools, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, etc., within the manifesto, which is kind of short, and we think that's fine. We should be able to remember some of these things. But actually, when we dig deeper, well, then we have customer satisfaction by early and continuous delivery of valuable software, welcome changing requirements, etc. And you can see this list becomes slightly more cumbersome. So all of a sudden, we have 4 things to remember, then 12 things to remember. And it goes on and on and on. So is it really a surprise that we don't really remember these things? So 4 values, 12 principles, 4 ceremonies, 3 roles, it goes on. And we often focus in on, are we doing these things correctly? Which means that we end up losing sight of what are we truly trying to do. So by focusing in heavily on the methodology, it might lead us into a problem.
And this is just Agile, right? So companies try to implement Agile, and most of the times they have other concurrent methodologies that they're trying to implement. And why does it fail, or why is it why is there a struggle? Is it because of the methods or the tools? For the most part, no. The tools are good, the methods are good, and they work. The thing is that change is, for most part, contextual, and it's not easy. It's complex. So also, many of the frameworks were not developed specifically for your context, which makes it that you have to have a level of adaptability to the framework that requires a deeper level of how the framework works or how the methodology works. And that also takes many years to master. And it's not just at an individual level. It needs to be at an organizational and team level. That needs to be mastered in order to be successful in their implementation. So what we see is that generally implementation ends up failing both at a strategic level and at an individual level. Despite being useful and enabling improvements in some parts of the organization, it still fails to have an end-to-end entire organization change process being run by one methodology or couple of them.
So because we kind of like try to create almost like a silver bullet scenario, we end up potentially creating a sub-optimization. So that kind of, we insert a methodology into the middle of an organization without giving thought to how the rest of that value either is generated or travels through an organization, let alone how it gets validated and consumed, etc. So therefore, we often create that, as I say, sub-optimization of an organization by doing something that we think is, and we are led to believe, will create an optimized organization.
And we really like this sentence that says, complex rules and regulations give rise to simple and stupid behavior. Simple and clear purpose and principles give rise to complex and intelligent behavior. And this is at the core of what VFQ Foundations and what we've built really is, right? So it's a simpler approach for better outcomes. Basically, it's around increasing value, improving flow, and enhancing quality in your organization by creating a discovery mindset. And this is achieved by using experimentation, value propositions, and visualizations as the key practices to deliver ideas faster, which ultimately is the goal of any enterprise, and again, being an idea, a product, a change process, or anything else. So it's this simplicity that sits at the top of any methodology that allows us to start impacting change from day one, instead of having to wait for teams to adjust, for organizations to adapt and reorganize, by having just 3 clear principles and 3 practices.
So we no longer have to wait to work out whether we've truly adopted that kind of agile methodology. It's actually, as Pedro just mentioned, we can get started straight away. We don't have to worry for the learning curve of, are we doing this correctly? Have we been to enough conferences? Have we read enough books? Have we, are our teams doing enough, sprint zeros, etc., to get used to this? Rather, actually, we can enable you immediately to start making a difference and start uncovering that value.
And yes, does it require mindset change? Yes, that is needed. But that's also the reality of the world we live in today, where everything changes so quickly and context is so important that we do need to change. The way we do that, though, is through action and implementing immediately and trying it out hands-on, so that we moved from a methodology-focused approach to an outcome-focused approach to something that is adaptable to your context, and it's built from the outside in, from a customer-centric approach. So instead of just implemented methods and methodologies, VFQ Foundations is designed for to answer these specific questions at its core. Are you delivering value to your customer, and do you have a system of flow in place that it's optimized to deliver that value?
So again, if you think about the Agile methodologies that you may be very familiar with, or you may have tried, you may be in that struggle zone of putting them into true practice inside your organization. At the core of those, there is still talking about, we want to deliver valuable things to our customers. We want to continuously improve. So again, looking to do the similar types of things, but because of the complexities, sometimes in something which seems so simple and so elegant, unfortunately, when it doesn't fit the organization or the shape of your organization, there's often a struggle to actually adopt and adapt it to your needs. So if you do focus in on delivering value to your customers, so these two questions can help you really understand how you need to drive this through, how you need to change, and more importantly, how that mindset needs to be adopted.
And this is why it works, right? We don't go about it by saying, well, let's change your mindset, or let's change the way you work, or just let's measure what you're doing currently. We basically integrate everything. We create a mindset, and we use the mechanics to help solidify that mindset, and the measures that are forcibly embedded into those mechanics, again, create a loop that is self-reinforcing. And this is what we achieved with VFQ Foundations, and this is the product that we're really proud of and I wanted to present to you. And this new way of thinking and of working, that we are sure that it's going to be really good for anyone that takes it.
So remember that, okay, we know in a mindset that's the hard part, to kind of how do we change and influence mindset. But if we go back to the quote that Pedro showed earlier, where human beings just need clear, simple purpose. We're incredibly good and we're incredibly creative. However, if we don't have a clear purpose, then these things are very difficult to sometimes achieve. Just having mechanics in place, just having governance in place does not ensure success. So we need to couple these things, so mindset, mechanics, and measures, to ensure success, which allows us to then mature, which allows us to then improve the whole organization, versus just adopting a methodology and kind of hoping and kind of wishing for the best, despite all of the pieces sometimes looking as though they're the right pieces.
Yeah, exactly. It's beyond just implementing sprints or Kanban boards or whatever mechanics, or just having some sort of mindset that we expect to stick. Everything is a self-reinforcing loop. So we'll explain a little bit about the three guiding principles. I think that many of you will already be familiar with it, but we'll explore what's behind it before we go into how we implement and how we use the practices to achieve this.
Okay. So VFQ principles. So realize value by delivering early and often. We want to optimize flow by managing end-to-end, and we want to discover quality through fast feedback. Okay, so these are our founding VFQ principles. So we want to realize, optimize, and discover, okay? And we want to make sure that we are realizing our value. So value is our important thing. We want to make sure that we're optimizing things end-to-end, okay, to unblock those things that are stopping from that value from being delivered. But we also wanted to discover what is truly valuable. What is truly valuable and what is of true quality. So what is of quality to the end user? So what is valuable and what is important to them? So value. So we want to make sure we're realizing that value as early and as often as possible. So instead of usually stalling things up and delivering things in bigger chunks, we want to make sure that we are actually delivering that work, okay? So making sure that we improve the cost, expenditures, etc., and making sure that we actually get products out. Okay, one of the biggest problems is the longer something takes, the more likely is the market will actually catch up with us and make that irrelevant. Or our staff will find workarounds, and therefore again making it no longer valuable to us. So storing that idea for long periods of time, despite the fact we may have plowed money into it, despite the fact we may have signed off the business cases, it's only valuable if it's in the hands of our customers. It's not valuable just inside the teams delivering, actually building that particular thing, be it, again, a process or a product. Okay. Flow, again, if we're looking to deliver value early and often, we have to look at how work is flowing. We have to look at what's actually stopping the work from getting into the hands of our customers. So in order to do that, we have to measure and manage. Okay, so we have to manage how work is flowing. In order to do that, we need to measure things like cycle time, lead time, but pretty much we have to understand what's really happening, and then look at what's actually constraining that work, stopping that work, and then remove those constraints. Okay, there may be multiple constraints, but we have to choose one. We have to find one, start, and eradicate that in order to continue. So again, realizing that we don't just undertake a methodology, we have to manage this, and it has to be end-to-end. So just having a delivery team or a product build team who are capable of shaping a product every 2 weeks is great, but if your organization is unable to release the necessary staff to work on that, or the funding to actually approve and pay for that, and that takes months to years, or if we have competing things which again we don't understand which are the most valuable, those are the types of things that are going to slow the flow of that work. So we need to pay attention to the whole end-to-end versus just, again, a moving part where we build things.
And another point with flow is that it's optimized for a specific goal, right? So sometimes that might mean we go as fast as we can, but sometimes might also mean we're slowing down to ensure that there's an extra quality in the process. So remember that flow is, optimizing flow is in regards to the specific goal that you have. If you have identified the value correctly, you will understand how you need to optimize flow to deliver that value specifically.
Yeah, unlocking that value also unlocks urgency. If it's the most valuable thing to you, then you will unblock. Again, if we think about projects which go red, they often move very, very quickly once the project has gone red. But why not have the same sense of urgency, the same level of urgency with your most valuable ideas in order to get them in the hands of the customer? So quality. Okay, how do we really discover quality? Well, actually, we need to ensure that we build the right thing, and we need to build that thing right. So there's many ways which we typically look at quality. Sometimes it's defect count, sometimes it's UX guidelines and everything else. Have we designed and built it to the right quality measures? But essentially, one of the elements that we really need to ensure is this fit for purpose? Is this the thing that the customer truly wants? So we need to ensure we're getting faster feedback. The first time that you're going to actually know that you've got the right thing is actually once you've got it in your hands. So we need to ensure that those feedback loops are improved, shortened, so that, again, the goal is to unlock that value and get the value into the hands of the customers. So to do that means that we need to ensure that we have faster feedback to improve the delivery mechanisms to get to that customer. So, but how will we know? How will we know that we've achieved that? What tools can we use? And this is what sits at the core of the VFQ Foundations, is what tools can we use to actually do this? And we've stick with what we call three essential practices. So relatively simple things that we actually use day to day, but we just put a process behind it to make it something that we use in our work lives and be something that helps us to discover value, flow, and quality. First one is experimentation, right? So how do we discover what is valuable through experimentation? How do we deliberately go about understanding that? How do we deliberately go about understanding how a flow system that is optimized looks like, and how do we ensure that we continue to do that as we change and discover other valuable things? And how do we put the feedback loops in process
to ensure quality. How do we know that we're building it right and building the right thing?
So notice that we've added the word deliberately here several times. We have to become more deliberate about how we go about discovering value. This is not just, okay, I've got an idea, I think it's valuable. Okay, great, but how are you going to test that out? How are you going to experiment around ensuring that it's valuable? So that deliberateness is something that is essential to how we proceed.
So experimentation sits at the core of everything, right? And it's basically about something that we usually feel uncomfortable with, which is what do we know and what don't we know? And what's the risk behind the things that we don't know that will hurt our decision-making process, right? So for example, if we just think about what do we believe it's valuable or what do we believe it's this right system of flow for us, and we surface what the unknowns are, if there are many there, things that we don't really understand, don't really control, or I'm not so sure about what happens if we change one of the dials or change something there, what's the risk of not understanding the system and of not understanding what value is?
So if you break it down into things such as like, okay, this new idea, this new product is going to attract 1,000 new customers every day. How do you know? Do you know that for sure? Is it really in the known category, or actually if it's in the unknown? And if it is in the unknown, how might you find out? Okay, and what's the risk of you not finding out? Is the risk releasing a product or a feature that actually no one wants? Is the risk actually spending money unnecessarily? And how might we change that? How might we reverse those dials to, in other words, to spend a little and find out a lot? And so therefore being very, again, deliberate about these questions about what do you know versus what is unknown is essential.
So we have a simple decision-making process, and just recently I was in a conversation with a client, and they were pretty much describing the same model that we have, which was they were building a new product, and they were saying to me, there's an element here, we're pretty sure it works, we've done it before, so we've just immediately moved into realize, we just immediately moved into building it. There are elements that we understand, but we're not quite sure about how they behave or what happens once they are in front of the customer, so they experiment with it. But there were elements that were complete unknowns. They knew nothing about it, both from a technical standpoint, or if they try to run an experiment, how to even interpret the results. So what they ended up doing was just talking to experts, researching, and doing those kinds of activities. And this is the model that we have for when do you need to go and explore more with your unknowns, or when do you need to go and experiment. And if everything is feeling comfortable and you have a good knowledge base and a high level of certainty, then you just go and build. Obviously, depending on the cost, and cost is always a variable here. It might be a 3D graph, but as a basis, this is how we should do the decisions regarding the knowns and the unknowns of our system, always regarding value, flow, and quality, and the elements that sit below those elements.
So, yeah, so remember, all we're trying to really do is increase our certainty and knowledge levels. Once we have increased our certainty and knowledge levels, we get to the point where we can realize. When we can realize it, then we truly have it in the hands of our customers. Until then, we have the explore and the experiment parts to play with, to learn more, to find out more, to build an experiment, to then understand, again, increase our knowledge and increase our certainty, and then taking us to that realized point. So as far as value proposition, so again, remember that one of our primary goals is to deliver value, okay? It is to actually deliver valuable outcomes to basically your customer, okay? So in order to actually become more deliberate, it can't just be a statement of we need to build X or we need to deliver Y. We have to actually get to the point of creating value propositions in order to test those, because that's all it is. It's a proposition of potential value. How will you experiment to find out and whether that value is true value or whether it actually is something that it may be a good idea, but maybe it's not right now. Maybe we have another set of value propositions which are more valuable. With the VFQ Foundations, we will take you through a set of key concepts, things around what are the jobs to be done. So what is the customer's true job to be done? What are they really trying to do? Building value propositions themselves. How do you actually start and how do you then maintain? How do you find out additional information to drive those forwards? Things like journey maps and value maps in order to understand more about what that value truly is and how we can potentially unlock it over time. Again, understanding that value is what we're supposed to be driving forward.
Yeah, and as Steve was saying, value propositions is basically your statement, your proposition of value, right? Like as the term explains. But what sits above and below, or left and right of it, is the jobs to be done. And a quick example is why you buy noise cancelling headphones, and that might not be because of the sound quality. It's probably because you're going in a flight, or you're going into a place that is really crowded and noisy, and you want to isolate yourself from that, right? So that's a job to be done of a pair of headphones, which is slightly different from listening to good music. And value maps and journey maps, which is how do you transform that value proposition into something tangible, right? So any company can state that they built the best quality, lowest price, but how you execute on that is the difference maker. So we explore both sides of the coin of what a value proposition is, and we teach you how to do it.
And visualization. So we've talked about, obviously, experimentation, value props, and the final piece would be visualization. So often when we think about visualization within any of the Agile methodologies, we're often talking about a Scrum wall or a Kanban board or a Trello or a Linkit or whatever, those kind of tools. But actually, visualization is way more powerful than that. So this is an interesting picture, and one that genuinely I think I would have a trouble actually describing exactly what this is and how to show somebody this is. I could say, hey, it's this really funky building in Montreal, or we could simply show you a picture, and then you would understand. So the power of visualization is more than just the Kanban boards. What do you currently visualize? Maybe it's like how you go from idea to market, and what stages that your company is heading towards, where all those value propositions are along this flow. And this flow would exist at multiple levels, one being portfolio, one being at a product level, and one being potentially at a team who's actually working this. But it allows us to actually see the world in a different way. Again, helping us understand how ideas go to market, how we improve our business, how we run our business, how we actually truly deliver and improve customer experience, how we actually improve, getting those great genius ideas into market, and again, allowing us to balance out our world.
This is at a macro level. At a strategic level, we can see this is a way of visualizing that the way that work moves and the way we think about idea to market. But
this is what we usually see, okay? And this is really hard, and this becomes harder to manage the more complex either your ideas are or your organization is. But this is what we typically have to deal with. And there is much more information, there is much more detail that we can show and share, that we can visualize. What is the goal? What is the driving message that the team needs to understand and follow every day? How do I know what my sense of urgency is? How do I know that this new feature, this new request that's being added to this board actually is really something I should even give airtime to, or simply discard? Without understanding truly what visualization is supposed to be, again, we may get lost in the mechanics of, am I using a lean kit correctly? Again.
And just to conclude on that, as human beings, we just have limited capacity. It is impossible for most people to explain what we're seeing right now on the screen, right? Someone actually guiding another person through the work. So visualization allows for this, allows to limit, to expand the constraints that the human brain has and have a single point of view for a number of people just to communicate around.
So basically, VFQ Foundations, okay, it's there to help your organization develop a discovery mindset, discovering what is valuable, discovering how to unlock that value as it travels through your organization, and discovering, you know, the quality that lies within that. So it's more than just simply a set of tools or a methodology that can, you know, help, like, bring hope, I guess, to your organization. It's not meant to be a silver bullet. It's meant to be something that you can actually put into practice immediately. It's meant to resonate at all levels of an organization, not just a development team, not just a product team, but all elements. So in other words, value should be something that resonates within the entire organization, from the C-suite downwards, down to your customer. Flow, how work is stopping, how we can, you know, alleviate those problems, how we can eradicate any of those flow issues. And again, quality, although we have our own subjective understanding of that, we can help distill it down into, are we building it right, and are we building the right thing in order to deliver value to customers?
And we're not saying this replaces other methodologies, right?
No, it's complementary. You know, at its heart, it helps you position and understand.
It helps you start from day one with a purpose while you master a methodology and adapt that methodology to your organization.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
So we have a free course that you can find in this link. We'll also send you an email after the webinar with the same information. We help companies, and we've been helping companies going through these workshops and through this process to build the practices and the mindsets that they require to start implementing this new way of thinking and of working. So feel free to go and try it out. It's on our website, valuefulquality.com. You can take a look, you can start exploring it, and would be great to have your feedback. So other than Q&A, which we're going to jump into now if you want. So we have a couple of questions already coming in that we will be addressing. Like, try it out, go to our website, gives us feedback, get in touch, ask any questions that you have. So into questions. So who does this target? Steve.
So a lot of times when organizations try and adopt agile methodologies, typically the target audience appears to be a development team. Agile almost equals development. Therefore, it suggests that a lot of the organization don't need to be involved in that. So the target for VFQ Foundations is the entire organization, be it change agents, leaders, change management groups, development teams, QA resources. So pretty much I could literally list every single member of an organization right now, and it has an applicability to it, because everybody who's involved in setting and uncovering and delivering of value to your customers, to your organization, this is applicable to.
It's one interesting thing that we've been having, especially with VFQ Foundation since we started running it with our clients, is how you can actually attach this process to different practices, right? And how you can use this and design thinking, use this and agile, use this and just a strategic scenario planning session, and it links, right? We had clients saying to us that they could use this for change management, and it is part of what you need to understand in the change management process. What's changing? What are the knowns, the unknowns? So in any time that you have to deal with unknowns and you are not sure about the impact of those, this is the right frame of work and the right mindset to have. We have another question.
So we have some questions coming in. Thank you. I just put. So does it work in isolation? Hang on, let me just widen the question. Okay, does it work in isolation if a development team did this without external teams' adoption? I think it basically helps make things easier to understand. So that development team possibly did, again, learned a bunch of terminology that may not resonate within the organization. So we're trying to use words that actually mean something to the organization. When we talk about Scrum and sprints, I know I'm picking very much on Scrum, I don't mean to, or Kanban, or WIP limits, or whatever you really want to say, it doesn't help people understand what's truly being tried to do. So this does work in that circumstance. Anything to add to that? Nope. Nope. Okay, next question. How do you measure the effects of the approach? Do you have any defined metrics?
We have for flow, value depends on time to market, but feel free to expand on.
So we want to start, obviously, measuring things like, so effectiveness of the approach. Obviously, we tie this to a maturity model. So again, recognizing that an organization has a journey, okay? In order to improve how it is working. So we use a maturity model to help visualize what those steps are and what might need to be undertaken to go from one level to another. Obviously, we need to define, and quantify what value is, whether it be even if value is knowledge, that is still has a quantifiable measure, or whether value is truly monetary, etc. Measuring things like cycle time, lead time. So again, how is the work flowing? And again, bringing in good quality metrics. So again, are we delivering the thing that actually the customer is wanting? Or again, rather than just looking at traditional, I'm going to pick on software right now, just traditional software defect measures, starting to look at ones which actually help drive the right behavior of discovery. Okay, how might we know the knowns and unknowns? Bringing in measures around those.
And we had an interesting conversation. It's anecdotal with a client where they started talking about what experiments are we running and how we're discovering value and discovering what's the right flow system for us, which was not part of their vocabulary before, and started becoming something which is way easier to understand. Because it's something we're familiar with on a day-to-day basis, and we expand on that on the course, so feel free to check it out. But it's the word of experimentation and just the act of doing it becomes ingrained really easily, in contrast with some really complex tools that take longer time to master.
Or even just terms like fail fast. We often hear this a lot, that we just need to fail fast. Well, okay, I get that, but unfortunately it uses words which don't necessarily resonate in the organization because it contains the words fail. We like the word fast, but not the word fail, whereas experimenting our way to value, experimenting and discovering our way to value resonates far better to enable people to understand what they need to do. Again, agility doesn't necessarily help itself in some of the things, because we talk about delivering value early and often, and maybe an agile method might talk to you about minimum viable product. The slight issue with that is the word minimum, because minimum equals least, and nobody wants the least viable product. So again, helping focus more on that driving of value and discovery of value. It's essential to success.
Let us know if that answered that specific question, if those were the metrics and the effectiveness of the approach that you were asking about.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I just reached out and asked if anyone had any more questions, so please feel free. I mean, but again, we'll just sort of go back to the fact that, we encourage you to try this out. It is free. Please go to Value Flow quality website, and VFQ Foundations under courses. Again, we'd love your feedback. How does it resonate with you? How do these terms sit with you? How does the idea of focusing in on value and thinking about things like experimentation, thinking about things like visualization,
value propositions,
and understanding that value propositions form the heart of everything. We understand that typically, I mean, sometimes one of the questions we get asked is, how do you get started? Which one do you choose first? The human in us chooses value proposition. But in order to understand whether value proposition is truly a value proposition or whether it's just perceived value, not real value, we need to have an experimentation mindset. So despite our human nature of following what we believe is valuable, ideally you start with the experimentation piece. You need to understand discovery and experimentation. Once you understand the tools and the methods around that and the approaches towards that, then you can start to approach, actually, is this value, and how do I build value propositions? Once you're building value propositions, if you know you have something valuable, then you're into the realm of, how do we visualize this for success? How do I help others understand the vision, the approach, and where we are?
You start with the problem, you surface the unknowns, and you work your way through value. One more question.
Oh, so the maturity model, how do you know that it's a real measure of an organization's maturity? So we measure along the aspects of value, flow, and quality. Again, trying to focus in very much around how we believe an organization really should focus and harness itself. So in other words, trying to deliver value. We have to assess where they really are, both in mindset, mechanics, and measures. I said both, that was really three things. But basically, we measure across those aspects. That helps us get a much better understanding, and obviously the steps from one level to another. We should probably do a webinar on the maturity level.
The maturity model,
this could be a very, very long answer. But yeah.
Yeah, at a basic level is, do organizations understand value? Do they know what value means to them? And I don't mean this in a I don't understand my product kind of way, but it's, are you able to track value along the value stream map? Can you measure the time that it takes, and do you understand why it takes that amount of time? And do you have the systems in place that allow you to monitor both elements, value and flow?
Yeah.
And we go from there, obviously, but that would require another hour at least.
So we got another question. So how quickly can I start delivering after the VFQ Foundations course?
Well, you can start pretty much during.
Yeah, we try and make these work-based. So again, we try and set things within your context, because within your context you'll truly be able to understand and truly be able to apply. So essentially right away, versus going on another course and maybe getting a certification for after 3 days of attendance, where very much you're a practitioner in learning. This is something that you can apply straight away. The mindset shift is something that we believe if you can put something into practice, you can start practicing it and therefore adopting it straight away. So yeah, we do believe that you can start delivering straight away inside the course and the very next day when you go back into your office. So does it make sense to have mixed groups in the training? Is it better to have groups from different areas of the business? Yes and yes. So basically, again, how often have you, and some of you who have been in any Agile training, how often is it just a team of developers and maybe some testers? Very rarely is it actually the folks who make the decisions. Very rarely is it that element inside an organization who we shall name the business. But yet, who is it that actually controls and shapes, and delivers true value? Well, it's everybody. So we need everybody in there to understand this. On their own, it's pretty much, it's not as effective. So yes, it does make sense to have mixed groups. And is it better to have groups from different areas of the business, of the organization? I would say yes, absolutely. We have another question. For the course to be effective, do you think there needs to be a C level of investment into the change? I think for value to be delivered by an organization, there needs to be a C level investment in that change. So yes, I would agree that in all honesty, I think they need help. I think they need help in understanding how their organizations are delivering value, how they are experimenting and finding that value that our customers want.
True end-to-end, right? So true end-to-end means from idea to market, and whatever that idea comes from, and usually the C-level will be involved.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, that was an easy answer. Again, I like yes answers right now. Okay, so how do you know someone's mindset has changed? Yeah, that's an interesting one. That really is an interesting one.
So there's a couple of things that you can spot, right? One of them is a behavioral change, right? You see people doing things differently. Does that mean that there's a mindset change immediately as soon as you see a difference in behaviors? No, that will be through consistency. If you start seeing those behaviors become consistent, then you're on to something. And some of these things take time. The reason why we tie it to the practices and tie it to practices that are, while not easy, they are simple, is that because it's a self-reinforcing loop. So by doing it more, it will support that change of mindset. You will start seeing in the way that you communicate, you behave, you actually work. And for me, and this is at a personal level, is about people asking the right questions or asking more questions. Right? As soon as you get to the point where you're asking, why are we doing this, or how should we go about doing this, or how might we?
That's the question I was waiting for. So basically, that how might we? If a C-suite, for instance, or any leadership member starts asking the question, how might we? We're in a discovery mindset. So when you start seeing those questions, when you start hearing those questions and seeing that behavioral change, we know we're heading in the right direction. We know now we are comfortable not knowing. We're not comfortable as humans being in an unknown state. We'd rather kind of pretend that we know more than we do. But when we're open and honest, it enables us to actually experiment and discover, and therefore we can unlock value versus working on something for a very long time only to deliver it, or maybe deliver it, and it actually unlock very little value for an organization.
Yep, fully agree.
Okay. Just checking if there's any more questions.
Well, we also don't have much more time.
That's true.
So feel free to email us any questions that you have. We will also share the deck with an email. There's the email as well, hello@valuefulquality.com. Feel free to email us, to reach out. We'll be happy to address any questions that you have regarding the foundations, the principles, the practices.
Even how, yeah, I was going to say, even how you might share it with others, how they might use it, how you might start implementing it with other folks. It's free for you to consume, free for you guys to use. So please feel free to reach out to us for a conversation about how you might put this in with a team, or even actually with C-suites. That would be really interesting to see what their response would be.
Yeah, how can we help? We're open for that conversation, obviously.
So one of the things we've just been reminded to ask you, thank you, Emily, is there is a survey to be completed at the end.
Yeah, so please, if it would
again, feedback. We love feedback.
We would really appreciate if you could leave your feedback. That would be awesome. Thank you so much. Hope you all have a great evening or day, depending on the time zone that you are in.
Yeah, thanks for taking your time out of your day to come listen to us talk about this. We've been super proud of this, and it has been one of our kind of missions to how can we get their tools into the hands of people quicker so that they can actually start putting them into practice sooner. We believe with VFQ Foundations that we've really gotten to that point. So we really do look forward to your feedback and working with some of you folks moving forward.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you all.